The Strait of Hormuz, a critical artery for global energy trade, has been the site of rising tensions and confrontations between the United States and Iran in recent years. This vital waterway, which connects the Persian Gulf to the Gulf of Oman, is the conduit for roughly one-fifth of the world's daily crude oil supply. Over the past few years, as tensions between the U.S. and Iran have escalated, Hormuz has become a focal point for military actions, political brinkmanship, and economic disruption, with each incident reverberating globally. On April 23, 2026, the conflict reached another level when U.S. President Donald Trump authorized an aggressive military posture in the Strait of Hormuz, marking a dramatic shift in the United States' engagement with Iran. The U.S. Navy was ordered to target Iranian boats laying mines in the strait, a provocative move that could lead to more confrontations. President Trump's statements, made via his preferred platform, Truth Social, directly addressed the situation and revealed an increasingly confrontational approach toward Iran's actions in the Gulf. This moment is one of the most critical in the ongoing conflict, as it further risks escalating into full-scale military action that could have global consequences. In his statement, President Trump emphasized the severity of the situation. "I have ordered the United States Navy to shoot and kill any boat that is putting mines in the waters of the Strait of Hormuz. There is to be no hesitation," he said, adding, "Additionally, our minesweepers are clearing the strait right now. I am hereby ordering that activity to continue, but at a tripled-up level." This announcement underscores the deepening hostility between the U.S. and Iran, with the stakes rising significantly. Trump's directive is a clear escalation, signaling that the United States is willing to adopt extreme measures to prevent Iranian forces from using the Strait of Hormuz to disrupt global shipping lanes and control vital maritime routes. The U.S. response, a military posture shift. Trump's announcement to escalate military actions in the Strait of Hormuz follows a series of increasingly bold moves by the United States to block Iranian shipping activities and enforce sanctions on Iran's oil exports. These actions are part of a broader effort to counter Iran's growing influence in the region, particularly its support for proxy groups and its involvement in the ongoing conflicts in Syria, Yemen, and Iraq. The U.S. military has ramped up operations to intercept Iranian vessels and enforce sanctions, and President Trump's order to aggressively clear the Strait of Hormuz marks the highest point of escalation so far. On the same day as Trump's announcement, U.S. military forces boarded the MT Majestic X, a stateless tanker that was allegedly carrying Iranian crude oil in violation of international sanctions. The boarding occurred in international waters far from the Persian Gulf, highlighting the increasing reach of U.S. enforcement actions. The operation was swift, and the vessel was detained by U.S. forces, a clear demonstration of Washington's intent to limit Iran's ability to circumvent U.S. sanctions through maritime routes. The Majestic X was reportedly linked to a network of tankers moving oil from Iran to its allies, circumventing international sanctions and providing vital resources to Tehran's war economy. The Majestic X seizure is part of a larger series of actions by the U.S. to disrupt Iranian shipping operations. In recent months, several Iranian vessels have been intercepted, including tankers and cargo ships carrying goods that the U.S. considers vital to Iran's military infrastructure. These operations are intended to limit Iran's access to the international oil market and weaken its financial base, which in turn limits its ability to fund its proxy wars and other military engagements in the region. While the U.S. is taking these steps in an effort to enforce international sanctions and curb Iranian influence, they have also sparked considerable anger in Tehran, which views these actions as acts of aggression and violation of its sovereignty. In response, Iran has accused the U.S. of destabilizing the region and interfering with its right to maintain control over its territorial waters. The seizure of vessels, including the Majestic X, has become a recurring theme in the conflict, with Iran asserting its control over the waters and accusing the U.S. of fomenting chaos. The seizure of Iranian vessels by U.S. forces is not just a symbolic gesture. It is a highly effective tool in disrupting Iran's ability to conduct business through its maritime routes. For Iran, which relies heavily on the Strait of Hormuz for the transportation of its oil and natural gas exports, these seizures represent a significant blow to its economic and military stability. The U.S. Navy's intervention has thus become an essential part of the broader strategy to weaken Iran's military capacity and force Tehran into compliance with U.S. sanctions. Iran's response, detaining vessels and maintaining control. Iran has responded to the growing U.S. military presence with a series of actions designed to assert its control over the Strait of Hormuz. In the same period that Trump ordered the U.S. Navy to intensify its operations, Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps seized 2 commercial vessels operating in the Strait. Tehran claimed that these vessels had violated Iranian regulations and were operating without authorization, a justification that many in the international community view as an attempt to exert greater control over the critical waterway. The detention of these ships, vessels flagged to countries outside of Iran, has drawn condemnation from the international community, but Iran has maintained that it is acting within its rights to ensure the safety and security of its maritime borders. The Iranian government has also claimed that the U.S. actions, including the maritime interdictions, constitute an illegal blockade of Iranian vessels and threaten international shipping. Iran's supreme leader Ali Khamenei has been vocal in his condemnation of the U.S. and has framed the actions as part of a broader U.S. imperialist effort to dominate the region. Iran has also accused the U.S. of failing to abide by the terms of the 2015 Iran nuclear deal, formerly known as the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. Despite the U.S. withdrawal from the deal in 2018, Iran has insisted that the U.S. actions are fundamentally undermining any possibility of a negotiated settlement and that Washington's pressure campaign is only exacerbating tensions. Iran's foreign ministry has called for the cessation of U.S. military interventions in the Gulf, as well as the immediate lifting of sanctions to allow for diplomatic discussions to resume. In addition to seizing vessels, Iran has continued its military buildup in the region. The country has positioned missile systems along the coast and has developed advanced anti-ship capabilities, including speedboats and drones capable of conducting asymmetric warfare against larger naval vessels. These systems are part of Iran's strategy to deter or retaliate against potential U.S. or regional allies' military operations in the Gulf. By reinforcing its military presence in the Strait of Hormuz, Iran is signaling its unwillingness to allow the U.S. to dominate the region's waters without a significant military response. Tehran's narrative around these actions is consistent with its longstanding position that it will not allow foreign powers to control or interfere in the Gulf. In recent months, as U.S. military operations have intensified, Iranian leaders have made it clear that they are willing to engage in both direct military confrontations and proxy warfare to safeguard their interests in the region. The U.S. strategy, a wait-and-see approach. While the U.S. has ramped up its military presence in the Gulf, the Trump administration strategy remains somewhat open-ended. Despite the aggressive posture in the Strait of Hormuz, the U.S. government has indicated that it has not set a firm timeline for the end of the current ceasefire. President Trump has maintained that the ceasefire will remain in place until he decides it is no longer beneficial or until a negotiated deal is reached. This approach is consistent with Trump's broader foreign policy stance, which emphasizes unilateral action and flexibility in diplomatic negotiations. Unlike previous administrations, which pursued more structured diplomatic frameworks, the Trump administration has relied on economic and military pressure as primary tools of influence, leaving the door open for negotiations, but making it clear that the U.S. will not hesitate to take action if it deems it necessary. However, this approach is not without its challenges. The lack of a clear timeline or diplomatic benchmarks has left both sides in a state of uncertainty. While the Trump administration's military posturing may force Iran into a corner, it also risks alienating key allies and prolonging the conflict with no clear resolution in sight. Furthermore, the broader regional and global consequences of continued tensions, including rising energy prices, disruption of trade routes, and instability in neighboring countries, are significant. The White House has emphasized that the indefinite extension of the ceasefire is entirely dependent on President Trump's assessment of the situation. According to officials, the administration is waiting to see how the Iranian government responds to U.S. actions and whether Tehran will come to the negotiating table. The absence of a fixed deadline for the ceasefire, however, raises the specter of indefinite military operations with no end in sight. The U.S. military has also been dealing with internal challenges. On the same day that Trump made his remarks about escalating actions in the Strait of Hormuz, U.S. Secretary of Defense Pete Hex announced the firing of John Felon, the U.S. Secretary of the Navy. This dismissal was seen by some as an indication of frustration within the Trump administration over the Navy's performance in the region, particularly regarding its role in enforcing maritime blockades and countering Iranian threats. Heck's move to dismiss Phelan came shortly after the secretary's testimony before Congress, where he acknowledged the challenges facing the U.S. Navy in clearing the Strait of Hormuz of mines. The global implications. The situation in the Strait of Hormuz has far-reaching global implications. The waterway is a critical route for oil shipments, and any disruption to this flow can have a significant impact on global energy markets. The rise in oil prices, driven in part by the ongoing tensions in the Gulf, is already straining economies around the world, particularly in Europe and Asia, where many countries rely on affordable energy imports. In addition to the economic impact, the tensions in the Strait of Hormuz are contributing to an already volatile geopolitical environment in the Middle East. The region has long been a flashpoint for conflict, with rivalries between Sunni and Shia powers, competing foreign influences, and the ongoing proxy wars in Syria, Yemen, and Iraq. The U.S.-Iran confrontation is just one piece of the larger puzzle, but it is one of the most critical for ensuring regional stability. At the same time, the global community is looking to European powers and China, two key stakeholders in the region, to help mediate a solution. While the European Union has called for diplomatic efforts and de-escalation, it has not taken direct military action against Iran. The EU has been vocal in supporting a return to the 2015 nuclear deal, but it has also expressed frustration with the U.S. policy of maximum pressure on Tehran. Meanwhile, China, which relies heavily on oil shipments from the Gulf, has called for calm and warned that any conflict in the region would destabilize global energy markets and hurt economic growth. In conclusion, the situation in the Strait of Hormuz is one of the most consequential geopolitical crises of the 21st century. As both sides dig in, the risk of escalation remains high. The outcome of this conflict will shape the future of U.S.-Iran relations, the security of the Middle East, and the global economy for years to come. With no clear resolution in sight, the world watches anxiously as both sides navigate the high stakes of maritime conflict, diplomatic negotiations, and military strategy. This revised and expanded version provides a broader context and analysis of the situation, delving deeper into U.S. and Iranian positions, the economic and military strategies at play, and the global implications. Would you like further revisions or additions?